Hi, and welcome to the Mom and Mind podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kat, and this is my 423rd episode and 9-year anniversary of the Mom and Mind podcast. That's just wild to me. I did not expect to be going this long. I didn't really have an expectation about how long this podcast would go on, but if you had told me when I started that it would be going for 9 years, I don't think I would have believed you. But here we are. It is 9 years, and I still have so many episodes coming out and no signs of stopping anytime soon. For those of you who have been listening since the beginning, thank you for sticking with me, listening to all of these really profound, moving stories of suffering to healing, listening into the experts who come in to provide their knowledge and wisdom and pathway to healing and everything in between. We've had all kinds of stories on here touching on almost all aspects of perinatal mental health, but you'd be surprised to hear that there are still some that I haven't gotten to yet. But that's not because I haven't tried. Some of these stories are hard to get to because they are harder stories for people to share. However, I'm still working on it and hopeful to just continue to touch on all aspects of perinatal mental health and the experiences of people going through difficulties with conception, challenges with pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and those early times of new parenthood. One of the key components of everything that I've done here on the Mom and Mind podcast is to show the full arc of somebody's story as much as they're willing to share and show to us is important because we definitely do hear about people suffering. We hear about the difficulties that they've had or maybe are having. We've heard the ways in which perinatal mental health conditions or difficulties during the conception, birth, and postpartum process has shaped their lives. And we've also heard how they found healing, how they have found help, how they have found themselves again, how they have improved their lives even through what they've experienced. We've heard about the hope that all of those people have for anyone out there dealing with a perinatal mental health condition or challenges during this reproductive period of time. And we've also heard really practical things for people to think about, things to implement in your life, to share with people that you love. We've shared resources, we've shared insights, we've shared research, we've shared many books from many authors who've shared about their experience or written about their experience, or experts who are providing a resource for people in need. And in these 423 episodes, there have been so many conversations, people vulnerably sharing, courageously sharing, so that somebody out there, maybe even you out there, could know that you're not alone, could know that even if you are physically alone or don't have anyone that you feel like is on your side in your immediate space, that there are people out there who know what it's like or who can identify with you or you can identify with them. And what's beautiful about all of that is that even if somebody doesn't have your exact story, there are parts of our experiences that overlap, that are validating, where we hear ourselves and see ourselves through somebody else's experience. And oftentimes that gives us permission. It gives us permission to feel our feelings, to get the help that we need, to even share. There are plenty of people who've come on here to share their story for the first time, and they might not have another space to talk about it in that way, or they're not interrupted or not talked out of their feelings or not minimized. That is what is so important about storytelling, about listening to people's stories, about being present here in this space, even though sometimes it's difficult and hard to hear and sometimes might even be activating for you if you have gone through something you're hearing from somebody else. It could bring up feelings for you, and that's not bad. That could just mean that there's a little bit more support that you need, or a little bit more work to do on some parts of your trauma, or that somebody is highlighting something for you that is still important. And when I started this in June of 2016, I had hopes for where we'd be. I had hopes for where this podcast would go and that it would help people. And I have heard from people about how much this has helped. Just hearing somebody else's story, being able to feel that there's somebody else out there who gets it, who knows, who has gotten the help and who has gotten better, to be able to provide that kind of hope for somebody who's feeling alone and isolated and desperate and angry and sad, that's really powerful. Just amazing. And honestly, I wish I heard from more of you. I do get emails, I do get messages through Instagram or Facebook about how these episodes support you, but I would love to hear from more people. I would love to hear how somebody's story impacted you or helped you or inspired you or got you to the help that you need. I would love to hear how hearing one thing from one expert or specialist that you heard from unlocked the idea for you that you could get better, that you could find help. Or if you're a listener and those things don't apply to you, I'd love to hear from you. And just know that you're out there listening. Anybody can email me at drcat@momandmind.com. I would just let me know that you're a listener and a little bit about who you are and how the podcast has helped you. I would just love to hear from you. And on this episode, I'm really excited because my very first guest, Dr. Shoshana Bennett, who is actually my first expert guest on episode 2 and 3. My story is the first episode, and she was on episode 2 and episode 3. And Dr. Shosh also came back about 3 years after the podcast first started to talk about how it felt to become a grandmother and how that brought up things for her from her postpartum experience. That was episode 154. And on today's episode, she's going to be talking to us about intimacy after a baby comes. So, what is it like in postpartum to try and stay connected, to try and keep intimacy in your relationship? And we're not just talking about sex, we're talking about closeness and connection as well. There are a lot of great parts of our conversation. So, I'm glad you're here and listening into this conversation with Dr. Shoshana Bennett. After she suffered 2 life-threatening bouts of postpartum illness, she helped pioneer the field of maternal mental health in the U.S. She founded the Postpartum Assistance for Mothers in 1987, became the president of California's state organization Postpartum Health Alliance, and then served as president of Postpartum Support International. She is the author of Children of the Depressed, Postpartum Depression for Dummies, Pregnant on Prozac, and is co-author of Beyond the Blues, Understanding and Treating Prenatal and Postpartum Depression and Anxiety. She was also the creator of the first app for postpartum depression and is an executive producer of the documentary Dark Side of the Full Moon. Dr. Shosh co-founded the Postpartum Action Institute, which is now the Parental Action Institute, that is committed to promoting parental mental health. To date, she's helped over 20,000 new moms and dads around the world through private consultations, teleclasses, conferences, webinars, and support groups. And I'm so happy to have her back on the podcast. So let's welcome Dr. Shosh. Welcome, Dr. Shosh. Thank you so much for being here again.
It is a pleasure and an honor.
I'm super excited for multiple reasons. One, you were one of the very first perinatal mental health experts I knew of and learned from. And to just be able to know you and learn from you along the way has been amazing. So that's number one. And number two, you were the first guest on the Mom and Mind podcast, and you were so gracious to do that 9 years ago.
That's amazing that you've been going strong for 9 years, not surprised a bit. And that was an honor as well to be your first guest.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a little surprised it's been 9 years. I wouldn't have guessed it, but the journey's been awesome. You were actually the first guest and the second guest. So the first 2 episodes that I had with a guest was with you. We talked about postpartum depression. And you talked about the Postpartum Action Institute and that work you had been doing at that time. And yeah, you filled us in on a lot of the work that you had done and that you're still doing. You're still very actively doing
The
a lot of
passion
work.
has, thank you. No, the passion has not dwindled at all. It's still very much there. I wanted to mention that Postpartum Action Institute has changed to Parental Action Institute because we're
Oh,
now, yeah, we
amazing.
didn't want to forget about the spouses and the partners.
Amazing. And that's right. You were also a guest the third time where you talked about the experience of a grandparent,
Yes,
which was really cool. Very interesting too. Just like you having had your own experience with postpartum mental health, and then the that experience as a grandparent was, I think, super insightful and really an interesting thing for us to all reflect on.
I'm glad that was useful. Yeah, and I do work quite a bit now with grandparents. Either they are raising their grandchildren
Mhm.
or the relationships with their children often get strained. And so, yes, and sometimes the same thing as with what happened with me is happening with them. They're remembering their own experiences
Right.
postpartum, and I'm helping them through that so they can be more present for their children and grandchildren. Yeah.
That's so important. And what I believe is so beautiful about it too is that healing is available whenever. That it doesn't have to, you don't have to get help the first 6 weeks, 2 years, whatever, postpartum. Sometimes things surprise you when they come up later and in a new context,
Yes.
sometimes you are re-experiencing some stuff.
Absolutely. Even if you have had help
Oh,
prior,
yeah,
it
right.
can still, it certainly surprised me. It's,
Mhm.
whoa, what
Mhm.
is going on here? Yes, it's never too late,
Right,
ever, even
right.
if you haven't received help prior.
Mm.
Yeah, it can reoccur, and there's help for you at whatever stage of life and development you are
Right,
in. Yeah,
right. Yeah, again, that's such a hopeful message. Sometimes people do ask, is it too late for me to feel better or to heal from this? And I know from you very
never.
clearly the answer is no. And you know what? You were one of the first people who I really heard talk about that sometimes going through something postpartum and then getting help, like mental health challenges, and then getting the help that you need can actually make you even feel even better than you did even prior to having kids, because sometimes
Yes,
it kicks up stuff that you didn't either have on your radar or know that you were dealing with, or it intensified something that was already there. And you shared that people can feel even better, even
yes.
though they are going through something that feels horrible.
Absolutely. If you use it as an opportunity for
Mhm,
growth,
mhm,
oh, all kinds of beautiful things can
mhm.
happen, and you can be healthier than ever. I always ask my clients, do you want your old self back? Or would you like a better self back? Would you like a happier self back? And obviously, I help them through the crisis first,
Of course,
right?
of
We have
course.
to put out the fire before we
Mhm.
rewire the house, so to speak. But yeah, what I'll always hear is, well, if it's possible to be better.
Right,
So, yes, the
right.
answer is yes. Depending on how we use any crisis,
That's true.
it's not only getting back on track, we can get stronger, healthier, happier than
Mhm.
ever. Yeah.
That's amazing. And it was true for me and my own experience as well. It rang true, and just learning that from you was incredibly helpful.
I'm
So,
so glad.
yeah. So today we're going to talk about something else, something different than what we've talked about before, and that is keeping couples intimacy vibrant and connected after baby comes. This is a big question for a lot of people, and it's a big stressor for a lot of people. Well, if you can maybe start off with some lay of the land type of things, like what are people talking about around intimacy? What even are we talking about?
Oh, I'd be happy to. Intimacy is really a very big topic.
Mhm.
Often, when someone hears the term, they jump directly to sex. We're only
Sure.
talking about sex. How I would love to approach intimacy is in various ways, because
Mhm.
again, it's the umbrella
Mhm.
over many different. Sex is certainly important. It's an important part
Mhm.
of couple intimacy, but it's not the whole picture at all. And if other pieces aren't healthy, it
Right.
really can impact the sex experience as well. So I'd love to come at it and give different examples that might be of practical use to your audience. In other words, to keep their, not only stay on track, but even, as we were just talking about, even get closer than they ever were.
Oh, that, of course, that applies there as well.
Of course it does. Yes,
it does.
It can.
Yeah, with the right
We
kind
assume with a lot of stress with a baby, we assume, oh, that's going to get back burnered. That's a mistake. That's a mistake. So I would love to, encourage your audience to think of it in a very different way so that it's the couple relationship is prioritized.
Yeah, that is important in a lot of ways because I don't think societally that's been the emphasis too much. But
Very true. It's all
baby is
about
here,
baby.
and yeah, and you lose your own identity along the way if the only thing you're thinking about is baby, let alone your connection as a couple.
Exactly. Exactly. So not only with many of our clients, Dr. Kate, you and I, we hear from mommies that feel like they've lost themselves. They need a lot of reminders to throw out those myths, right? Like their needs don't matter anymore. They don't have to nurture themselves, all of that garbage. But also some of the sadness, even grief, is often, have I lost the romance? Have we lost our coupleness, our coupledom? And it can be part of the depression and anxiety.
No doubt. Yes.
Because when there's that loneliness, when that you feel detached from your partner, it can be depressing. It can be very sad. Yeah, so we want to make sure that doesn't happen.
Good. So that's what we're going to talk about today is how to prevent that or maybe even find some connection. Okay, so if we're talking about intimacy, what are some examples of it people would be able to identify? Oh, I guess that is intimacy and connection.
Different ways of connecting to nurturing touch on the shoulder, a touch on the arm, facial expression, your smiles, your nods, you're staying connected in those ways. Body language. Are you sitting there listening? Things that we learn in our training, right? It's so very important, especially after a baby comes because of all the stress. Tone of voice. Not only what you're saying, but how. So there are many, and of course, sex is there as well. But even as you pass in the hall, as an example, right? And it might be a stressful time, just stopping, putting a hand on your partner's arm and saying, "I'm so glad we're doing this together, sweetie." That by itself, how much time did that take? What, 2 seconds?
Right.
That can make the difference between feeling like you're bonded with your mate and feeling again there's more distance.
Okay, so there's a lot of ways in that intimacy, that closeness connection can happen. And we'll kind of get back to that in a little bit, but I'm curious what you hear from people. What are some of the things that get in the way, or I don't even know if that's the best way to say it, but get in the way or just full stop make people just but keep distance from each other?
There's a lot of assuming going on in many different ways when a baby comes. Often, for instance, I just worked with a mom who was just assuming that since her husband was a very hands-on guy in all other ways, taking care of her while she was pregnant, where he wasn't participating at night, he was assuming she wanted to be in charge and was standing back and letting her handle things. He was being respectful, he thought. She was getting resentful. Like, why isn't he participating? They left out the talking about it, the expectations and the wants and the wishes when communication can happen in a respectful way, which is a whole other conversation as to how that can happen, really a lot of the negativity can just go. Because when this particular couple started to talk, they were both amazed. Like their eyes got, what? You want to meet? Fine, I'll do half the night. I'll be on duty. That's great. I didn't know. And she went, oh, I guess I didn't mention that. Yeah. Also, taking each other for granted is something, and not showing love in these various ways can really hurt a relationship. For instance, I hear often from my mommy clients, and most of them are female. I do work with men as well, but mainly female. They will say, I don't have to tell my husband or show my husband that I love him. He knows. I'll go, eh, 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 eh. Don't take that for granted. Look, he might know intellectually
Sure.
that, but unless he hears things like, I'm so glad we're doing this together and I love you, and with a kiss and a hug and a greeting each other at the door and things like that that maybe you used to do, it can, the intimacy can the sparkle can start to go out if you leave, if you assume
Right.
that the other one just knows and you don't have to really express it verbally and behaviorally.
Oh, yeah, that gets people into a lot of trouble with
Yeah,
each other and with themselves. Once you start getting into that assuming headspace,
yeah,
I think very quickly after that starts to follow resentment,
you bet. Yes, because
amongst
who
many
wants,
other things, but that's at least one.
you're among many other things, you're right. Yes, when we feel unappreciated, it leads to resentment, always.
That's
And yeah, with the men in particular, I'll say partners in general, the one who might not be on leave, who might be doing the earning, whichever partner that might be. Often they say, I don't even feel like a lover anymore or a partner, even appreciated as anybody other than the breadwinner.
mm,
It's like they've lost the connection and they really do feel sad and taken for granted. Often also when there's a feeling of I'm not appreciated, what happens is the couple gets into this battle of who's working harder. You start vying for the appreciation. I worked really hard, so did I. You get into this
yes,
competition. It's
yeah,
like there's a scoreboard up,
yeah.
which is bad news for intimacy. So you want to avoid that and show each other. Don't take for granted that she knows that she's a wonderful mom and that you appreciate how she's taking care of the kids. Tell her, tell her. And I often will tell moms if she's feeling unappreciated, don't complain, but go to her partner and say, I took great care of your kids today or our kids today, and kiss me right there. I mean, to get more of what you need and to keep that intimacy happening and to feel appreciated.
'Cause if you're on that path of making assumptions, which a lot of people do, it
Yes.
happens, you can assume that they don't see you, they don't care, that they're, all kinds of, you can assume they're mad at you, you can
Yeah.
assume that you did something wrong that they're not telling you about. Me. Your mind can go every which way about in that headspace, and before you know it, you're way down a rabbit hole.
You bet. And add sleep deprivation and other things
Well,
onto that, and it's
yeah,
times 10.
for
So
sure.
it really takes focus of what
Mhm.
you will be working on whenever possible before baby comes. But at least, when that chaos, hopefully joy as well, but when your life is upended with
Right,
an infant, you really have to focus on it and make sure you are doing certain things and not doing the negatives.
right.
And it doesn't take hours. It really doesn't. For instance, one partner is gone for a few hours and then returns home. The partner at home, I'll call partner number two, needs to stop what they're doing. Obviously, baby needs to be in a safe place. If you're on the phone with a friend, hang up. I know
Mhm.
this sounds like 1950s stuff, but I'm telling you, it makes a huge difference. Hang up because whoever just walked in the door is more important. Unless you're in the middle of making a pediatrician appointment and you
Sure.
need to finish that, go over and greet your
Mhm.
partner. Hi,
Yeah.
sweetie, glad you're home. Hug
Mhm.
and kiss. Again, a few seconds. And what that does to the intimacy level is
Mhm.
enormous and feeling important. Ooh, baby is in the seat over there. A person hung up the phone and came to
Mhm.
greet me. I
Mhm.
matter to her or to him. These little things are enormous. And when you don't do them, they add up all of
Oh,
these
for sure.
times that the attention and appreciation have not been there, that
Mhm.
can erode intimacy quickly.
Absolutely. So what happens when you were talking about before that, like, competition?
Yeah.
I'm doing more than you, or he's not doing this, she's not doing that. How do you help people who are like just seeing you individually and their like partner isn't there getting the same kind of support from you about how to do the back and forth. I'm thinking of relationships where they're like the resentment's already there and the one partner is saying, I don't even want to because I'm not going to get anything back, or I'm so mad at him that I just couldn't even stand doing that. How do you deal with that? How do you help them deal with that?
First of all, I will tell them, don't assume you're not going to get anything back. First of all, that's an assumption, and it might be absolutely wrong. And the rule of thumb here with doing any kind of couples stuff is you never wait for your partner to take that first step. You want an A plus in whatever you do. So I will make sure that she, no matter how she's feeling, this is about making her feel, helping herself feel better. So I'll say you take a breath and you start giving your partner what you're hoping, what you would like, whether or not you get it. In other words, let your partner know how much, what are the things you appreciate about what they're doing. But when you give a gift, it's not about expecting a gift back, but you want to do your part. In other words, if you were grading yourself or somebody or a camera were on you, are you doing everything you can to help your partner feel appreciated? If it doesn't come back, and sometimes it's not immediate anyway, but if they feel that time goes on and I will, just like I mentioned a few minutes ago, I'll suggest to them wording and tone, and they often role play with me how they can approach their partner to get more of what they need, rather than letting resentment grow and then they start snapping at each other. To go over to partner and say, I did a great, acknowledge themselves, not in a complaining way. Now, why don't you ever, that's a complaint. You stay away from that. It's, I did a great job today doing that. I'm so happy with myself. Give me a hug. So you get more of what you need. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it's important to the perspective that you're sharing is for you to feel good, you as the person, let's say the person who's at home or the mom, to feel good about how you're interacting with them, with your partner is important, because I'm thinking of multiple scenarios. One, if you're in a committed relationship, you guys are going to power through this like difficult time. It may be a little bit easier to do that approach to the partner for sure. But I'm thinking there's a couple of sort of people who popped into my head who were like not sure that they were going to stay in that relationship, like a very seriously questioning, not just because of postpartum stuff, but just in general. And the benefit of kind of behaving the way that they wanted to behave is that they also know that they did everything they could.
Yes. And also, no, that's a good point. Also, it's so important for their self-esteem because I want to make sure, look, my client's mental health is top on my list, and it hurts them when they're nasty. So I never give them permission to be nasty, ever. They are responsible for what comes out of their mouth, no matter, even if they're living with a jerk. They need to feel like when they look in the mirror, they like who they see, because often there's guilt. There's they didn't deserve that snappiness. I was really icky to them, and that hurts my client. So it's important to be respectful and not to come at somebody in a way that would make them defensive. That it's absolutely unproductive at best.
Sure. Yeah, and you were saying before how much harder that gets with loss of sleep and all of those things. So
Right.
it does take some kind of intentionality
You
to,
bet it does.
yeah.
You bet it does, but you're still responsible. You are always, no matter how difficult it is and how sleep deprived you are, of course, we're always working on sleep, right? That's top on my list. You're responsible for what comes out of your mouth. And if you do snap at somebody, it's up to you to ask that person for forgiveness and say, you didn't deserve that. I'm sorry, let me redo. Can I delete that and try again? There are different ways to do that, but ultimately, we're hoping to avoid that.
Yeah. And that, like, coming back for the repair, so to speak, after something like that can be part of the connection and intimacy too.
Absolutely. Now, dates are also very important and should not be backburnered. Would you
Yes,
like me to
please
go
say
through?
more. What do you mean about that?
basic rules of dating. I usually get a laugh on the first one when I'm talking to mommy. When she goes out with her partner, her significant other, she may not wear mommy underwear. Rule number
Got
one.
it.
And that's
Okay, I see what
usually
you're
what
saying.
I hear.
I see what
Because
you're
she
saying.
knows exactly what I'm talking about. She may not wear a nursing bra out with her husband. No. She may not wear that
That's
stretched
funny.
out, stained underpants. No, they should be in the garbage. But at least she needs to, even if they're a new size, she needs to get something that helps her feel sexy again. Now, sexy might be far-fetched to her at the moment. It doesn't matter. We need to help her feel more like her real self, like when she first met her partner. How did that feel? We want to start getting that back. So that's rule number one. It doesn't matter what partner is wearing underneath everything, but it matters what she does. And that doesn't mean you have to have sex afterwards either. That just means when you go out on a date, you want to feel, okay. And as simplistic as it sounds, you do want to change what you're wearing as well on the outside. You might have spent all day together. People work out of their home a lot.
For sure. Yep.
But just even more of a reason why you want to change things up. If your hair's down, put it up. If it's up, put it down. If there's no makeup on, put some. I remember putting on a silk blouse, something I would never pick the baby up in. Oh. And I'd put a bathrobe over it. Babysitter would come over. I would toss the baby over to babysitter and I'd rip off that bathrobe and I'd be out the door with my husband. So before the spit up would land on the shoulder. Anyway, so it makes a difference. Just make it special. Another rule of thumb is that you may not talk about your child or children. Not on a date. Nope. And if one of you goofs and starts talking about how cute the baby is, the other one needs to be lighthearted and go, oops, and get you right back on track. The parenting hat stays at home. You don't go on a date with it. Third rule, no business talk. Nothing. You do not spend a date talking about running the household, whether it's fixing the leaky faucet or whether it's who's going to pick up the older one from daycare. None of the running of the house. Business meetings are very important. Yes. But they are separate from date. You're only allowed to do light, fluffy talk with your significant other. You can talk about your next vacation. You can compliment each other. You remember why you're with that person. I'll often say to my clients, do you remember flirting? When there's a pause, yeah, on another life. But that's when you want to bring that back. Sometimes, actually frequently, I'll hear, oh my gosh, we can't talk about the kid. What are we going to talk about? I'm thinking, wow, you really need a date.
Yeah, this is precisely why you suggest to not talk about kids. Exactly. Struggle through whatever that awkwardness is of figuring out to talk about.
Think about that kind of shuffling around, not knowing what to say, like on the first date. That's intimate. That's intimacy. So even some of that awkwardness and getting all that back, reacquainting yourself. Oh yeah, I remember you. Yeah, it's all intimacy. So those are the basic rules of dates.
Yeah, that's important to just have that connection time and all the things you were saying about what you are wearing. It's not even, doesn't even necessarily have to,
it's not what you're wearing.
It's how you feel.
Precisely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Precisely. But changing it up can trigger something wonderful in your brain. Yes. Oh, I just changed something. Yep. My mindset is also different. Totally. It's not about whether you're wearing a t-shirt with holes in it. It's not about that. I might have put on a silk blouse, but you don't have to. It's really just reminding yourself, let's make this special.
So there's intention in there.
Yes, you bet.
It's not just letting every day roll by as one into the next to the next.
And it's setting them up on a regular schedule whenever possible so that at the end of one date, you know when the next one is. Just like I'll suggest for my clients, when you're doing something great just for you and nurturing you, filling your pitcher up, so to speak, when is the next time you have some respite to take care of yourself? You need to know so there's not burnout.
Right, you have to have something to look forward to.
Exactly. So whether it's every other week on Saturday afternoon, it doesn't matter. But you just need, so whenever that's possible, set it up on a regular basis. with that person or persons, whoever will be watching your child or children.
What about for people who maybe can't get out or don't
Mhm.
have help
Have a
or
date at
whatever?
home.
How would you suggest to do that?
Although it's best and easiest to be out, even if you're
Mhm.
in your backyard, you don't want to hear the bell, you don't want to see the mail, you don't want those regular everyday things, if
Mhm.
possible, to be bombarding you.
Yeah, true.
But if you can't, you can still make it special. You have to be even more intentional about it
Oh,
because
yeah.
there are many things you're ignoring the dishes. You
Mhm.
really are focusing just on the two of you
Mhm.
and not being distracted with folding the laundry. But yes, you certainly can. You certainly can. It takes planning like anything else. When the kids are down, I'll meet you in the living room, I'll meet you in the bedroom, or I'm
Mhm.
looking forward to watching that movie together.
Yeah, sure.
So it can still have that nice anticipation.
Which is super important. I like looking forward and anticipating I think is a big part of the
It
process.
is, because I'll remind them. So when you were first dating, did you
Mhm.
look forward to that next date? Was that really cool? Did you get excited about that's what we want to bring back. Whether
Mhm.
it's at home or out, yeah, it's the excitement eventually that you want to get back. And if it's not there right away, at least you can look forward to getting out.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Are there any kind of, I don't know how you would call it, like parameters? Let's say somebody, one person in the couple is not ready for sex, but
What
does
does
want
that mean?
closeness.
I
Or,
would ask them, why aren't you ready? What's
well,
getting in
yeah,
the
that
way?
could be,
But I'll let
that
you
could be a
finish your
lot of stuff.
question.
Well, there
I
could
didn't
be a
mean to
lot of stuff in
interrupt you.
there.
Okay, they say
Which
they're not
is
ready.
super important. But
Mhm.
yeah, they're not ready, but they do want closeness with
Mhm.
their partner. How do you help somebody walk through that? Is it like setting up parameters? Does it go back to communication? How do people navigate that?
Okay, this is a big topic.
Mm,
Okay, if they have physically not been given the green light yet by their
right.
OB,
That's
they
one.
cannot
Yes,
have
that's one way.
intercourse, if that's what you're talking about. But I
Yes,
think the
intercourse.
reasons why, and I'll ask,
Uh-huh.
when you say you're not ready, what does that mean? If they say, I'm not in the mood, I'll say, now this might surprise your audience. It often surprises my clients until they understand what I'm talking about. I'll say, get in the mood
Mm,
or allow it to happen. But again,
yeah.
getting back to I can't physically have intercourse. Can you still have sex? Yes. Might you need to be creative? Yes. But I'll tell you, I educate my clients about how important the sex is. It used to be. If they say, yeah, sex used to be important in our relationship, it still is. It
Mhm,
doesn't mean you need to have intercourse. And if they want to get explicit with me, they certainly can. There's no
mhm,
TMI when it comes
mhm,
to but they don't have to. I'll
mhm,
just say get creative because
mhm,
it's important and you want to prioritize that part of intimacy. You
mhm.
want sex, but if you cannot have intercourse, obviously don't do anything dangerous.
Oh, sure.
But this is when couples can get I've been doing this work, what, for 37 years? Over the decades, I have watched couples, I have heard the most beautiful stories about how their sex life has improved
Mm,
when there's been a high risk pregnancy or when they haven't been given the green light by their
mhm.
OB yet, because it's not same old. They
Oh,
need to
I see
get
what you're saying. Yeah.
creative with
Mhm,
positions, with different parts of bodies, with it and their body when they have been given the green light for intercourse, again, things might need to go slowly, and
mhm.
certainly there needs to be sensitivity, and they're
Yeah.
getting to know their body again, and so is their partner. But exploring, how could that not be intimate?
Oh, sure.
Even
Right.
if I will let my clients know that for their hormonal well-being, they need to get those juices flowing. That will help their mental health, not just their physical health. We're talking neurotransmitters. There were two OBs, gosh, they've both retired. They're fabulous. So in the San Francisco area, that used to actually prescribe a certain number of orgasms to their new mothers.
What?
New mothers. They would say have 3 to 5 orgasms per week if you want to get your hormones back on track. Now, I haven't done the research as to whether or not we even have data about
Mhm,
that.
mhm,
But they had anecdotally the
mhm.
best successes with the mental health of their patients. So I'm just putting that out there. I'm not speaking as a doctor,
Uh-huh.
but getting yourself going is good. We know it's good hormonally.
Mm.
We know.
Well, that's fascinating.
And
Yeah.
mental health, and mental health for other
Mm-hmm.
reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that connecting, doing it for the relationship, which is an
Mm-hmm.
important part of keeping their mental health well. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, as we talked about at the very beginning, if there's more distance, that can add to depression.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So again, for
Right.
both reasons, they're not doing it as a favor to their partner.
That gets into some other
That's
dynamic
will
that,
breed resentment.
oh,
They're
for
doing it
sure.
for themselves.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. There's all kinds of reasons why people might not be cleared or why they might not be ready. I'm thinking in particular of if there's things around birth trauma or stuff like that, where emotionally it might take them a little bit longer to be like in that space to,
Absolutely.
to want to,
Absolutely.
but closeness
However,
can still happen.
yes, and they can, yes, it's not about being insensitive to that.
Oh
Obviously,
yeah.
if there's trauma
Yeah.
happening, one needs to approach it. But what is very easy to have happen is that it's used as a barrier. And the longer you use it, the
Mhm.
harder it is to reconnect. So if there's been birth trauma, if it's a situation like that, not just that their libido is low, or
Mhm.
not just that they're not in the mood,
Oh, right.
not just because they're tired.
Uh,
I don't allow my clients to use those as reasons, by the way. But
uh,
if there's really a serious mental health psychiatric thing going on, I will still encourage them and give them steps about
mhm.
how to move forward so that my client isn't setting up a barrier that can turn into a wall after a while. And in
Oh,
the
I see what you're saying.
meantime, she becomes less connected.
Mhm.
The sadness and the grief, and also what's happening over here with the partner going, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, I've lost her forever. This can be very tough. Does this make sense to you?
Yep,
There's
I see what you're
great
saying.
sensitivity
Mhm.
happening,
Mhm.
but as quickly as possible without pushing in the wrong way.
Oh, sure.
It's helping to encourage some kind of lying naked, whatever she's able to do as she's working through the psychiatric part,
Mhm.
so that it doesn't build into something
Mhm.
that becomes so much more difficult to remedy
Oh,
later
sure.
on.
The longer that it goes on without understanding those why, I hear that's not where you're at, but being curious about the why and what's behind it is as
Yes.
opposed to just like a blanket kind of
Yes.
reason.
Because women are usually validating each other. Often it's, I'm not in the mood. I'm not ready yet. I'm nursing and my libido or I'm touched out. I've been touched by the baby all day. Why would I will help my clients. If, for instance, they've decided that every Wednesday evening will be a sexual time with their partner, I'll encourage them to, if they're doing a combination of bottle feeding and breastfeeding, they might do more bottle that day. Or baby
Mhm.
might sit in the baby carrier next
Oh,
to
I
her
see what you're
instead of
saying.
being on top of her,
Uh-huh.
so that she saves some of her touch energy for her
Mhm.
partner.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
things like that,
For
they're all
sure.
kind of course, it's all for every client, there's a different set of factors and different things
Absolutely.
going on. So I'm speaking in big generalities
Mm.
here, but I don't allow a client to say, I'm just too tired. And I understand what exhaustion having a newborn is. But if it's not priority, if even just talking about it with a partner, saying, I am just beyond tired, I am ready to just drop into bed, but how about tomorrow night? And really sticking to it. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? But if
Mhm.
you have
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
use that, then it's not put off and put off and put off.
Oh,
It's
right.
important that no matter how tired, you still prioritize. Very
Mhm.
important. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm also thinking about there are several female clients, women that I've met with who have the opposite challenge. Like they've been cleared, they're
Mhm.
medically cleared to have intercourse,
Yes.
but their partners don't want to, or something has shifted or changed, and they're very frustrated by the
Mhm.
partner. They don't like why they don't want to have sex with me anymore, or they don't.
Mhm.
And but the not wanting to have sex also includes not wanting to be close, like to touch, just hugs, just glances, just longer conversations. And that one seems a little bit more challenging because, like, you
Mhm.
really you can't, if you're the person who's in therapy and you can
Hmm.
do the nice
Yeah.
things and the
Yeah.
inviting and stuff, but
Right.
it's really tough if the other partner is just not either not getting their own support or
Hmm.
not for whatever's going on for them, they're not engaging
Or explaining what's
or
happening.
explaining. Oh yeah,
Yes.
well
They may
sometimes they
not
don't know.
know, by the way. Exactly.
Right.
I'm glad you're bringing
Right.
that up. I'm glad you're bringing that up because we're talking so much about not having the mom, the birth
Mhm.
mom, have the barriers. But you're right. Sometimes I would say some therapy, some
Yeah.
counseling for either both of them together or
Mhm.
the partner on
Yeah,
their own.
what's
I
going
think
on?
that
Yeah.
would be that is important, especially if they're not sure what's going on. I can think of a case actually now where this was a husband who actually was traumatized. She wasn't, but
Hmm.
he
Hmm.
was traumatized during the birth process.
Oh, yeah. That for
Not only
sure that
watching, but
happens. Yes.
there was a lot of bleeding. There was and he didn't know what was going on. He thought he was going to lose both of them, the
Oh,
baby and the mom.
yeah.
And so he just couldn't go not only near those parts of her that used to be sexual. He was having a hard
Mhm.
time
Mm.
because all he could envision was blood.
Oh,
But
yeah.
also, yeah, he needed some of his own help. So that can happen. It can happen for a number of different reasons.
Sure.
And I would always suggest, especially if it isn't expressed verbally and worked out that way, that
Mhm.
they get some couple help or that partner gets their own help.
Yeah, that is really important because it stereotype a little bit, but maybe it somewhat is fitting that for the sake of this conversation, like men might not know even what's going on, or but they might not have been socialized or grown up in a way where they could even talk talk about their feelings or know what's going on for themselves to be able to explain it to their partner. So like having a therapist as interpreter is
Yeah.
super important.
Yes. Yeah. And I really think it takes a real man to go to
Mhm.
therapy.
Yeah, it does take a
And
lot of
and so
courage.
encouraging the moms to say to their man, I see this is really tough for you. And if you're willing to talk with somebody, I'd be so proud of my man if you could to work in that language. I'd be
Because right,
so
it's a
proud of you.
super vulnerable position to be in.
It is. It is. Or sometimes he does know and he does try to
Mhm,
verbalize
mhm,
it, and
mhm.
she doesn't know how to handle it. And she's not the
Sure.
therapist. She just went through a ton of stuff on her own. And
Right.
so going
Yeah.
together to somebody might be very useful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did use the word you just used. They like the vulnerability in all of this is so up.
Oh,
Like that, like you were talking about that, like awkwardness of the first dates and like
yeah.
trying to have to feel each other out. There's some of that vulnerability again here.
Yes, and often surprise. I didn't know I'd be feeling like that, or who
Oh,
knew
right.
that was going to happen. I didn't know how it was
Yeah.
going to affect me.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've never been through anything like this
Oh,
before. So,
right.
yeah, again, the normalizing of the surprises along the way is important. But yeah, no, I'm glad you raised that issue because it's not so uncommon.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like a handful of women currently who are it adds a certain amount of stress that they want to be close with their partners, their male partners, but they're just not there yet for whatever reason.
Yes. And also during pregnancies, sometimes the partner, the guy is going, I'm afraid because, and again, they need to be educated. I'm not talking about high risk pregnancies here,
Yeah,
just
right.
normal,
Hmm.
they don't want to hurt anybody
Hmm.
inside, or they don't understand that, no, it's fine and dandy. And
Right.
sometimes women are feeling extra sexual
Yeah.
during pregnancy,
I
and
think it
that
makes
can be
it
tough.
so hard because we don't really, we as people in general, these conversations don't happen a ton. Just for one, and the things we're talking about, addressing, normalizing that these challenges exist. As if you're home, postpartum, and maybe you're talking to your friends about this, but I
Mhm.
find that a lot of people are not. They're either like embarrassed or that's just not something they talk about or have ever talked about with their friends before. And
Right.
so you're just alone trying to figure all this out.
It often feels that way, and even in support groups, often
Mm,
this stuff is not discussed. A woman in a support group saying, "My husband doesn't want to have sex with me," might feel a little strange.
you're right. Right.
Yeah, Because often it's he's going, come on,
Oh,
and she's the one.
yeah. I've
Yeah, go
actually
ahead.
heard this in a support group now that you mention it. It was a while back. And because of all this like resentment, another woman in the group was like, "Oh, I wish I had that problem." And they were
Yeah,
in their own depression, their own anxiety. It was
yes.
complicated by a lot of other
Oh, it always
things.
looks better over there.
Right.
I'd
Like
rather have what.
nobody wants any problems. That's
Right, but
what's
when
really,
we're going through our thing, it's the hardest because we're
uh,
going through
mhm,
it. But I can't emphasize here, just like in every topic we've talked about under this umbrella of intimacy, whether it's a talk about sex or somebody not feeling comfortable with it, or whether it's, make sure you don't come across as complaining. And
mhm.
it's so easy to talk about what you're not getting. Like, how come you never,
Sure.
or you're not doing. So a lot of re-educating, I'll say,
Mhm, mhm,
goes into go into my clients, and when they approach their partner,
mhm,
not in a threatening
mhm.
way, not in an attack or in a critical way, not no criticism. It's interesting what the partner is willing to then talk about,
Right.
because they're
Yep.
not defensive. They haven't been attacked. They're not
Yes.
feeling like a failure. And so it's so huge in
Mhm,
every single area that we've been talking about,
mhm,
how we're approaching. You want them
mhm,
to share? Come across as a detective, as a
mhm.
loving detective.
Right.
"Huh, I noticed that when I do this, you often do this.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that,
Yeah.
honey, because I love you and I
Yeah.
want to find out more about how you
Mhm.
tick. What's happening? Is there anything you can share with me?" Who's
That's
going to get
so,
defensive with that?
of course. Yeah. That approach is really great because, yeah, you're not coming in with blame or criticism, putting someone on the defensive. You're coming in with an energy of wanting to connect, of wanting
With
to see
love
them.
and care.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that can
Um,
make all the difference. Often it can make, and maybe not all the difference, but
mhm.
85% of it, they might start sharing even without the professional help to start with. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's right. So there's a lot. Intimacy is about first connect communication.
On all levels,
Mm,
physical, speech, body language. Yeah.
mm.
On all levels.
That's what I hear through all of the things that you're saying is just what you're communicating, how
Yes.
you're approaching the communication, and
Yes. And
uh,
not thinking of surviving this time and getting through it intact, but how can we use it
mm.
so we grow the intimacy?
You would hope that that's the premise for, yeah, couples who are going through this together and want to stay together. Of course, at the core, they want that. They want to stay together. They want to
Yes.
have the connection and the
And make
closeness.
things even better than before. But
Mhm,
often the way we're programmed,
mhm,
it's, of course, you're going to be at each other for the first 2 years. Often they just accept. They
mhm.
accept no sleep and you're going to be fighting and just get through it. And then you'll be okay when baby is this age. No,
Like,
don't accept that. I want your audience to never just throw that out.
because that's a lot of damage can happen to a relationship in that amount
You
of
bet.
time. I
That's
mean,
right.
because
So,
you're both in a process of change and growth and vulnerability and maybe depending on what you're going through, being fragile, if you will. And I'm not saying that in a negative way, just as in
sure. Yeah, no.
this is a tough time and things are
It
hard.
is a vulnerable time.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be negative
Mhm.
when handled together sensitively
Mhm.
and with compassion and good old fashioned understand listening. Listen, all of that is under the umbrella of intimacy.
For
So
sure.
the overarching rule here is don't back burner your couple relationship.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
really, as to use your word, intentionally
Mhm.
need to focus on it more than ever. Does it mean you need sex every night? No.
Mhm.
But again, just those little ways, the touch, the smile, the hug and the kiss when partner comes home, the
Mhm.
I value you. I'm so glad you're here and I'm not doing
Mhm.
this alone. If just those can make all the difference and can grow your intimacy during this challenging period. I would add that humor is golden
Mm.
during difficult times. Humor can help so much and add to intimacy at any time in our
Mhm.
life, but especially now, laughing at the bags under your eyes together,
Right.
giggling at just silly things, because it's easy, especially when sleep deprived, if one is, to get extra tense and anxious and bitter, and we start
Mhm.
saying icky things. Watch that and start turning it into, imagine if a, for instance, imagine it were a sitcom, right? And you're watching it on TV and there's a
Mhm.
camera on it. Wouldn't that look rather
Mhm. Mhm.
hysterical? That the peas dropped on the floor and the doorbell rang and the baby spit up and right? You'd be
Yes,
laughing
yes.
at what's going on. So whenever, and when I say humor, I don't mean laughing at.
Of course. Yeah, yeah.
You're both laughing at a situation, or when you can giggle, it can lighten things up and it's
Mhm.
easier for you to connect. So
Totally.
again, it's not easy. It might sound simple, as
Mhm.
we all know, it's not an easy thing, but when you
Mhm.
focus on standing back
Mhm.
and watching the situation from a bigger perspective,
Yeah,
it can also make an enormous difference in the atmosphere in your home and
absolutely.
therefore the connection between partners.
Definitely. 100%. Now that you're saying it, I would even I argue that the humor together is also intimacy.
Absolutely. When you're laughing together, as
Yeah,
a
oh,
matter of
totally.
fact, even we know that the happiest couples in bed are the ones that can laugh. An elbow goes into a nose and you both crack up or whatever. That
Yeah.
awkwardness,
Uh-huh.
just like on that first date, shuffling
Mhm.
around, not knowing
Mhm.
what to. Yes, laughing together,
Mhm.
absolutely, Dr. Cat,
Mm,
adds to intimacy. Yeah,
that's great.
yeah.
I thank you so much for coming on again and sharing you have been doing this for a long time, sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and your hope for couples. That is really important. Thank you
My
for taking
pleasure.
the time.
Thank you for the invitation.
To learn more from Dr. Shosh and get connected to her resources, go to drshosh.com. And if this episode has been helpful for you or someone who could benefit from hearing it, please do share. On whatever podcast platform you're listening from, there's usually a share button. You can go find it and easily send it to anybody who could benefit from hearing this. And as I said at the very top of this episode, I would love to hear from you. If you'd like to reach out, email me at drcat@momandmind.com. Let me know that you are let me know you're a listener and tell me a little bit about yourself and how the podcast has supported you or helped somebody that you love. Getting these messages from you guys really helps keep me going. It makes me aware of where this podcast lands in the world and how it's impacting people and is really inspirational to me. It gives me some of the fuel I need to keep doing this podcast. And whether you're a brand new listener or you've been listening from the beginning, all of these podcasts are still available, evergreen. You can go back in the catalog and listen to all of the episodes if you want. You can search in the search function on the podcast platform you listen to, or you can go to my website, mindperinatal.com or momandmind.com, and there's a search function for podcast episodes there as well. You can listen to all of them. You could listen to the ones that only pertain to anxiety or find one that the title resonates for you or you'd like to learn more about somebody's experience. These, thankfully, are not one and done. This podcast lives and you can find any episode of it that you'd like to listen to or re listen to. So, thanks so much, new listeners, old listeners, and everyone in between. I really appreciate you being here. And listening into these profound stories, listening into the experts, learning a little bit more, putting awareness out there into the world around perinatal mental health so that nobody has to find out about this the hard way and nobody has to suffer alone. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time.